What up, friends? Welcome to the Sabrina Scott podcast, where I talk all about how to claim your magic and change your life. This is going to be a very spicy episode today, so buckle up. Very impulsively recorded, but I do think I'm onto something here, and it really is informed by a lot of what I've observed around the current war in the Middle East. And I am recording this likely a week before I'm actually putting it live, so some things may have changed. Who knows? It's a dynamic, evolving situation. But as you guys probably recall, I have been sympathetic to the Palestinian cause since I was 17. I read some books in the conflict by the comics journalist Joe Sacco, who was really formative in my understanding of the situation. And interestingly, over the past few weeks, due to certain things that have come out in the news, like the tunnels and just certain things I've seen come out about what is going on in the region, the strategies that folks in Palestine are using, and the hatred that I saw from a lot of activists online and in my city. It inspired me to get more curious about what the Zionist folks believe right now, today. So I hadn't looked too much into the contemporary Israeli situation politically in the past few years. Just focused on other stuff, as one does. And so I decided, you know what? I think I know everything about this issue. Obviously, that's bullshit. But I thought I knew enough about the issue to have a pretty educated opinion. I think that generally was true. I think my opinion was still based on learning, based on education, based on reading, based on books, based on interviews, based on testimonies, based on documentaries. At the same time, I was like, you know what? I think I could probably learn more about this, and I'm open to being wrong. And I'm open to learning something surprising. I'm open to learning about other perspectives. And I'm open to just learning new shit about this. Let's go hard. What is the Zionist perspective? What is the Israeli perspective right now? Let's find out. So I did. So I did some research. I did some looking. I did some reading. And it's so interesting because there is a lot of overlap between witchy communities and Jewish communities. There is a word Jew-witch. It's been a long-term word that's been used. Some of the two most famous witchcraft books that were published in the 70s were both written by Jewish women. Pop quiz, if you don't know which books I'm talking about, I'm pretty sure I included both of them in my 13 witchy books list, which you can grab. There is a link to get that in the description of this podcast episode. If you want to go download that, you'll be able to do so instantly and check out what books I'm talking about. But there has always been this overlap between folks who are Jewish and folks who are witchy. And so I noticed a lot of tension in my Instagram feed from folks who were kind of working for themselves out, how did they feel about this? And I have a ton of Jewish friends. Likely, I don't actually quite know why. I think maybe because the culture is a little bit different than the WASP, the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant culture, in a way that I relate to maybe a little bit more than the WASP culture. I've never really been able to get along with a lot of the waspy folks, just so passive aggressive and weird. But anyway, that's maybe a topic for another episode. The TLDR is I decided to go on a hunt for some new information, and I started reading a lot of interesting shit about the role of religion, the role of shame in Arab culture, the role of the martyr in Arab culture and in Islam. And I started to get really curious. And the first niggling or spark in my mind that, there's something interesting here that I don't fully understand, it makes me a little bit uncomfortable, let's look into this, was there were a bunch of Instagrammers live streaming the war, basically, and sharing live videos and Instagram stories of basically people blowing up. No other way to put it. And some of the translations of these videos that were posted was like people screaming, holding dead bodies, and basically saying like, praise God, this person is a martyr and will be blessed, and all of this type of thing. And that made me incredibly uncomfortable. I was just like, what? And so I decided to do a bit of a deep dive into the concept of martyrdom in Islam, and specifically the concept of martyrdom in Palestinian society and in the context of the current war. Like, why is everyone celebrating these deaths or having these reactions like, you know, they're a martyr? And it just was a bit odd for me. I was like, why is this being, why? Obviously, I'm oversimplifying it, but I decided to do a bit of a deep dive and read a bit more. And so my perspective on this has actually shifted. And I'm going to be sharing a very extensive reading list in my membership, just to show some stuff I've been reading to work through it. And the reason I'm sharing it, there's a few different reasons. One of them is it has to do with religion. It has to do with spirituality. And I think that, unfortunately, folks in North America are so divorced, and I think this has been me too until quite recently, have been divorced from considering the role of religion in this current conflict and how certain cosmologies are influencing the dynamic and the mechanisms and the flow and everything going on with the current conflict. And it became increasingly clear to me that the role of martyrdom and the role of shame and martyrdom and honor and all of that in the Middle East, in Palestine, in Islam, in certain interpretations by Hamas, also how Hamas was elected, all these different things created this swirl where I was like, okay, this is actually a really interesting thing that I think anyone who is interested in religion and spirituality should at least be aware of the role of these things and how that is influencing, not predetermining necessarily, but very much influencing the current conflict. And it's just something that hasn't really been talked about a ton in North America. North America, a lot of the time, at least in my experience, my observation, tends to just think that everyone of all cultures is actually the same, and tends to underestimate the role that cultural difference can have in conflict. That's kind of my thought on this, my opinion. And so I'm going to be sharing that, even though my community is a decidedly like, please do not argue about politics type of space. Like that is a rule that I intentionally have created for that community and that membership. But part of claiming your magic and changing your life is also about educating yourself and expanding your brain and challenging your beliefs and challenging your ideas and being open to a new framework or a new way of understanding something. Even if everyone has the exact same politics, at the end of the day, I don't care. I think that's totally cool. But I think what's important is that grappling, that curiosity, the learning more. For me, that's important, regardless of wherever you're at on the political spectrum and whether you change your mind or not. Personally, I did happen to change my mind. And now, even though I don't agree with the way that Israel was founded, and I don't agree with the way that people were booted off their land, I don't agree with that at all. At the same time, here we are, and I don't agree with the demonization of Israel for self-defense. And I don't agree with the painting of Palestinians as these kind of absolute victims when we see how Hamas is doing the things and how a lot of civilians are just like all about it. I think it's very oversimplified in terms of how a lot of leftist activists are seeing it. My political opinions changing aside, and I just wanted to share that because I think a lot of people don't openly talk about shifts in political opinion. I think a lot of people don't openly talk about deciding to read more information and deciding to open up and expand and complicate your understanding of a situation once you take in more information. I think a lot of people don't share that, maybe out of fear of being shamed or embarrassment of feeling like they were wrong or ignorant or whatever. But I'm just sharing this now, I guess, as a model to show, yeah, you can change your mind and there's no shame in that. And I think it's totally cool to be able to expand your perspective and expand your views. Like, I think that is a cool, normal thing to do. And if you read all the stuff and your opinion remains the same, again, I'm fine with that. I think that's okay. But for me, what I value here is curiosity and moving away from this idea that we are always going to be certain. And in a war zone, like new knowledge, new information, it's coming to light every day, every minute. And so it makes sense to shift our perspectives based on what we read, what we learn. I think one of the things that really changed my mind was seeing these fucking high-tech tunnels that Hamas has built, all these tunnels, and yet they built no like bomb shelters for their civilians. And so to me, that made me think a lot about the role of death. When we have a culture that sees the martyr as holy and is like young kids want to grow up to be martyrs, I think it creates a very interesting mathematics of death. And I think that can't be ignored. That shouldn't be ignored. And I think it complicates this perfect victimhood picture that the far left folks kind of want to be pushing. And so I just want to throw that out there as some of the things that I've been thinking about with the role of religion and all of that within this conflict and certain ideas around martyrdom that we do see within a particular cultural and religious context right now, and how does that play into this conflict. So that is what is on my mind with that. And yeah, I've been sharing a ton of resources in my community, and I'm going to be doing that for some of the readings for March, because I'm sharing what I am reading, what I am listening to in that membership space. It's not all political, most of it isn't, but with the connection of this current moment to religion, I just don't feel like that has gotten enough play. So I'm going to be talking about that a bit. But aside from that, aside from sharing my shift in perspective and what inspired that, one of the things I've observed with this whole thing is that I do feel that this conflict has just become a bit of a like rage room for people, especially people on the left. And what I'm observing is a lot of people with a lot of very pent up rage about whoever, about whatever, are redirecting that rage into anyone who is not unequivocally pro-Palestinian without any kind of complicated feelings about anything. And I find that very interesting, like some of the vitriol and pure hatred and dehumanization and denigration that I'm seeing in some posts on social media. It's like, you are a garbage human being, you are the scum of the earth, like you are absolute trash, blah, blah, blah. And this is like really elevated, nasty rhetoric that I actually haven't really seen before in regards to something like this online. Like, obviously we had the Ukraine-Russia situation. I didn't see anything nearly as polarizing with that. There's been a lot of other conflicts and wars that have been going on and are still going on globally, and I haven't seen anything to this level where people seem to feel completely comfortable, self-assured, to move with this difference of opinion, let's say, and move rhetorically from a space of shaming others, demonizing others, denigrating others, insulting others, shaming them, trying to guilt them, and basically try to tell people you're the worst people on the planet, you are garbage, you don't deserve to be alive if you don't support Palestine. And like, it's very crazy. I also had someone that I know, that I fucking know, this shocked me and I'm upset about it, but whatever, basically say like, oh, they think we're protesting by the hospitals. That's all. But apparently they weren't. Apparently they just walked by, but still what I saw was fucked up. That's my opinion. There's a rally here in Toronto moving through a hospital, moving outside the hospital lane. There's, I don't know if you guys know Toronto, but there is a massive street that has a lot of hospitals on it, like a lot. I've been to all of them as someone who is disabled. And I remember replying back like, oh, right, so this person was like, yeah, well, we should protest in the hospitals next time if that's how the media will pay attention. And I was upset about this, and basically I was like, no, don't do that. That's not cool. Like, as a disabled person who has needed emergency care before, like, that's fucked up. Like, I just don't agree with that. And so it disturbs me that otherwise rational human beings in my fucking city and country in North America are willing to put our lives at risk, my life at risk as a disabled person, other disabled people, other sick people, other people having medical emergencies, lives at risk, blocking a hospital in order to protest on behalf of a war that is happening on the other side of the world, that has been happening in some way or another for a very long time. Like, for me to see those people's potential deaths that would happen if people were protesting at a hospital and blocking ambulances getting into the hospital and impeding medical care in any way, people would die, period. And that's why it's illegal in this country. It was just made illegal in this country. And so the fact that anyone who considers themselves intelligent in this country would say something like that and be like, yeah, let's protest in front of the hospitals so that people will care about Palestine. It's like, are you fucking stupid? It's just insane to me. And what I'm seeing here is a mathematics of, well, I'm so angry about this conflict that I'm okay with people in my country dying and having hospital access blocked in order to make a larger political point. In my opinion, that's asinine and inhumane and morally repugnant. That's my opinion on that. I just don't believe in that type of thing. And so my point here that I'm trying to make with this is that what that person said, in my opinion, is an extreme overreaction to the situation. It's a misplacement of rage. It's a misplacement of resources. And just seeing the harms that are happening, let's say from protests or the hate crimes that are happening against Jewish folks here, is just pretty crazy, just to write that off as nothing. But aside from that point about this suggestion of protesting in front of the hospital, which again I just find like so not cool, we do see a lot of people online, and interestingly, people seem to feel very confident to say this kind of stuff online, just to be incredibly bombastic, incredibly vitriolic, incredibly extreme in how bad they're saying other people are for the simple disagreement around this issue. Simple disagreement. And even when I was super pro-Palestine, like, I have never really demonized anyone from the other side. Like, maybe I didn't quite understand it at the time, why they would feel that way. But, like, even when I was pro-Palestine, like, I had friends who were pro-Israel and Zionist, and we were able to coexist, and it was fine. And so when I see this lack of coexistence, or this lack of respect for a differing opinion, there's an arrogance there, which I think bothers me a bit. And the other thing that I'm just trying to comment on here is the mass output of rage and hatred that I'm seeing towards anyone that has a different opinion. I'm commenting on this because I've seen this on a lot of witchcraft pages, actually, and I'm not going to name who. I think you guys probably know some of who I'm talking about. A lot of it is people I don't follow, but it's people who are quite well-known and well-respected in the space. And in my opinion, some of these folks are just, like, not that intelligent, and that's fine. Not everyone has to be. But, and I'm not saying that because they have a different opinion than me about the conflict. I want to be very clear. I'm saying that because of their vitriol towards people who disagree with them. And I've seen so many Instagram carousels of people posting, like, swipe throughs of all these protest signs, which are like saying, like, oh, we hate a neutral ass bitch, like, we hate you, blah blah blah, you're evil, you should die, like, all this stuff, and just that massive rage and hatred. And so what I kind of feel like this is, getting back to my original point here, I feel like this conflict has become like a rage room for people on the left. People who are likely frustrated with their life circumstances, people who likely are broke in some way, maybe they have a crappy NGO job, I have no idea, that pays no money. Like, I've worked for nonprofits before, I know they don't pay very well, like, you know, and a lot of within the woke community, it's considered evil if you have any money. You're considered to be immoral if you have money. The whole eat the rich slogan, I was very broke when I was very woke, that is a true thing. And it keeps people down. It keeps people from succeeding. It keeps people very downtrodden, unless they're going to exploit the system, which is a whole other thing I could probably get into in another episode. We've seen that with various people in Black Lives Matter who have Just Google it. They've taken tons of money. So there's a grift associated with activism sometimes. Very interesting to look into. But returning again to this rage, this output of rage towards strangers, I find it very interesting. And I think so a rage room, it's probably not exactly called that, but it's one of those rooms where there's all this like stuff and you can go and just break stuff. And you pay for the room for like an hour or two and you just go and smash stuff. And people do it, I guess, to let out their anger, to express their emotions. I guess it probably could be kind of fun in some certain context. And I just see the way that a lot of these people are dealing with this conflict as that. It's like they have rage towards certain people in their life, probably that they are not able to actually speak to. And so there is this displacement of that rage, of that emotion, of that anger, maybe towards their parents, maybe towards their boss, maybe towards other people who victimized them. Maybe they have been victimized at some point in their life and they didn't get justice. Very common. And so maybe these folks are just displacing that rage towards the other side, quote unquote, in this conflict. Because the rage is just so over the top, like it's excessive. And the most rageful people I've seen with this, like, have no connection to the region, which makes it even more odd. So it becomes this like weird political posturing of, look at me, I have the right political opinion. Look at me, I'm in vogue. Look at me, I am morally superior. Look at me, I am posturing myself to be more outraged, and so therefore I am more moral than you because I'm more outraged. Very interesting. And so I just see this as this weird, soupy displacement of emotion that otherwise people would be keeping in. It's very, very, very interesting. And it disturbs me, the extent to which people are demonizing other people and denigrating them and depersonalizing them and dehumanizing them just over a simple difference in opinion. And I think obviously with something like rape, for me, there is no two sides to that. That is quite black and white for me. Hopefully it is for all of you. But with something like this overall conflict, this overall region, I think rational people could come to different conclusions for different reasons due to what information they're exposed to. Obviously, my own personal view has shifted, but at no point in my trajectory with this whole issue was I demonizing people with the other opinion or telling them that they were trash or waste of space or a pox on humanity or whatever. Like, it just seems quite out of proportion. And so whenever something like this happens, it really makes me curious. Like, why is this happening? Why is everyone jumping on this bandwagon? And why? I just find it fascinating. And I've seen a lot of people with the little Palestine flag in their Instagram bios and sharing all this stuff. And, like, that's fine, do your thing. Whatevs. But, yeah, my perspective on this has really shifted as I've learned more shit. As I think we all should be learning more shit all the time. I think it's important. And I don't think anyone who listens to this podcast or anyone who really consumes my content will be the type of person to engage in that kind of behavior. I really doubt it. I think my audience tends to be more intelligent and compassionate and curious. Like, that's just the norms that are things that I promote and appreciate in my spaces. But just in case anyone who is listening to this has found themselves kind of swept up in this, I would just encourage you to take a moment, take a breath, and like take 10 steps back and be like, okay, why do I feel so fucking outraged right now? What am I actually mad about? This is not the first war on the planet where people who are civilians have been killed. It is not. There has been a bazillion wars that's happened. Why is this the one that you are upset about? And what is with the outrage that people who disagree with you? Is just something to think about. Is there a part of you, person who is outraged and lashing out at everyone who probably isn't listening to this anyway, but just in case you are, is there a part of you in your victimhood that is felt unheard? Is there a part of you in your victimhood that wants to punish people for not hearing you when you were victimized? really do like a trauma inventory. Because whenever people are so highly activated, for me, it's a sign to get curious. Like there's something there to unravel, to discover, to look into that likely explains what is going on there in terms of that out of proportion, like rage at strangers. And I think it's also really important to just be very aware of the circulation of affect on the internet, the circulation of emotion on the internet, and how emotion on the internet is often used to manipulate and control and persuade people. We are less logical when we are in our emotional state, and I think emotions are incredibly important. I think emotions are a form of knowledge, but I also think that our emotions absolutely can be manipulated by the internet outrage machine. And I think an important question is, like, who does that serve for us to be so one-sided in that way? When we're lopsided, who wins? What are we distracting ourselves from? What about our own lives are we avoiding? Just some important questions. And again, you're welcome in my courses, in my community, in my space, on my Instagram. If you disagree with me politically, I truly do not care. My rules of engagement are just curiosity and respect. And like, let's not incite violence. Like, let's not do that. And let's not tell people that they are waste of space for having a different political opinion. Like, maybe that's a little bit extreme. And it bothers me, this increased tribalism and this increased political division, this increased polarization. You can look up horseshoe theory, very interesting theory, very true theory, where when you see people on the far left and far right, the radicalization on two extreme ends, they kind of end up resembling each other a little bit. And so I think there is something with that going on right now as well. So whatever your emotional reaction is the present moment, take a breath, calm yourself, and really get in touch with your body and what the fuck is going on with it. It's normal that conflict can be triggering. It's normal that war can be triggering. But I think when North Americans especially are with no ethnic heritage related to the area are so swept up in this rhetoric of, if you don't unequivocally support Palestine as 100% victim, then you are the devil by definition. When people are saying stuff like that, it's like, okay, let's take a step back and observe and do a body scan and check in with ourselves and see, why am I so activated? Get curious. Curiosity can teach us a lot. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. I'm sure I've offended a lot of people, but this is my opinion on this at the moment. This is some of what I've observed, that a lot of people seem to be using this conflict as just this free-for-all permission to say the most vile things and the most insulting things about people. It's surprised me. I'm not surprised very often, but I do feel surprised by this situation. I feel like it's a bit icky. And I know I'll be criticized for saying that, and whatever. That's kind of my thoughts on this at the moment. And so whatever is bringing up for you, if you are one of those people who's dehumanizing others, maybe don't do that. And try to get in touch with your body, your reactions, what your reactions are actually responding to, like what is that actually about? And get in touch with your trauma. What is there that needs to heal still? Okay, that's all I have to say about that for now. What else? If you're going to send me hate mail about any of that, just don't bother. Like, you're just going to get blocked and I'm literally not going to care. That's all I have to say about it. Anyway, you guys can join up my community if you want, my little membership. There's going to be a link to join that up in the description of this episode. And I hope I at least made you think. I don't really care if everyone agrees with me all the time. I really don't require that of anybody that I know. But I hope at least I inspired some thought, inspired some curiosity, and maybe inspired you to switch around your perspective, or maybe to even inspire you to read an article or two, or a book or two, or whatever, especially something that you might have written off as wrong. Why not expand your brain? Why not see if it's actually wrong? Or maybe you're the one who is wrong. It's possible. We can all be wrong. In the spirit of knowledge and expansion, I will leave it with you. You guys know where to find me, CEO at sabrinamscott.com, and all my other links are in the description. Much love. Bye.